Imagine being 16 years old. Your world is supposed to revolve around school lunches, awkward crushes, and late-night video games. But instead, you find yourself sitting in a small interrogation room, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, with two stern-faced FBI agents staring back at you. And you know something they don't. Something that terrifies them. Something they can't believe a teenager could ever figure out. This is the story of the boy who outsmarted the FBI. At the turn of the millennium, America was entering a new digital frontier. Computers were no longer bulky, arcane machines tucked away in laboratories. They were in people's bedrooms, glowing late at night, connected to this strange, vast wilderness called the internet. Parents worried about their kids wasting time online, but very few considered what might happen if a kid, went exploring too far. And that's exactly what one teenager did, not with malicious intent, not to steal or to hurt, but out of the same restless curiosity that drives a child to take apart a toy, just to see what's inside. His name? Well, that's the thing. Even now, more than 20 years later, his identity is whispered about, buried under layers of speculation, half-truths, and sealed records. But what we do know is extraordinary. Early curiosity. He grew up in an ordinary suburban neighborhood. Soccer games, pizza nights, the hum of lawnmowers in the summer. But behind the closed door of his room, his world was much bigger. A cheap desktop computer became his window into another universe, where adults saw lines of incomprehensible code. He saw a living language, something to play with, bend and reshape. And in that restless age between childhood and adulthood, when the rules of the world start to feel like cages, he found a new kind of freedom, the kind hidden in glowing screens and blinking cursors. One evening, after weeks of tinkering, he stumbled upon something strange. It looked like an ordinary login screen, except it wasn't for a game or a chat room or a homework portal. It was for something else, a system not meant to be seen by someone like him. Now here's where most kids would stop. Close the window, shut down the computer, forget it ever happened. But curiosity is a dangerous fuel, and his curiosity burned brighter than fear. So he pushed further. What he had accessed, without even realizing it at first, was a federal system, a portal tucked deep within the architecture of the US government's digital landscape. It wasn't armed with the firewalls and security we think of today. This was the early internet, rough, experimental, vulnerable. And so, unknowingly, a 16-year-old boy walked straight into the FBI's house. For a while, nothing happened. Days passed, then weeks. He kept exploring, poking, learning. It wasn't sabotage. It wasn't theft. It was discovery. But inside the FBI's offices in Washington, alarms were going off. Somewhere, somehow, an intruder had slipped inside. And to the horror of seasoned investigators, the trail didn't lead to a foreign spying or a rogue hacker for hire. It led to a teenager. The knock came one morning. Two black sedans pulling up to the curb. His mother opening the door, confusion on her face as badges were flashed. Inside his bedroom, agents found the glowing machine, still warm, still running. They didn't shout. They didn't slam him against the wall. They just looked at him, half disbelieving, half unsettled, because what they saw wasn't a hardened criminal. It was a skinny kid in an oversized hoodie, his voice still cracking from adolescence. And yet he had walked past their guards, their codes, their passwords, as if they weren't even there. The FBI didn't quite know how to handle him. Was he a criminal, a prodigy, a national security threat? They sat him in a chair under that buzzing fluorescent light and asked him question after question. How did you get in? Who are you working for? What do you want? And his answers only deepened the mystery. I was just curious. The agents didn't believe him. How could they? In their minds, nothing about what he had done was simple curiosity. But the truth was stranger than any cover story. He wasn't part of some syndicate or a spy cell or an underground network. he was just a kid. Cybersecurity experts today look back on cases like his with a kind of awe, because what he uncovered wasn't just a flaw in a single system, it was proof of how fragile the entire digital world was at the time. When a teenager can stroll into the FBI's servers, what does that say about national security? What does that say about the billions of dollars spent on defense, surveillance, secrecy? It was a crack in the facade, and it came from the unlikeliest of places, a restless boy in a suburban bedroom. Legally, the situation was complicated. He was underage. The law had never fully accounted for something like this, a minor breaking into the government's digital vaults. Some within the Bureau wanted to make an example of him. Others argued it would be absurd to punish a child for exposing their weaknesses. In the end, details of his fate were sealed. Some say he was quietly recruited, offered a chance to turn his genius into service. Others insist he was placed under strict supervision, forbidden from ever touching a computer unsupervised. But the truth lies somewhere in the silence of sealed documents and whispered rumors. What lingers isn't the outcome, but the lesson. That moment when a teenager outsmarted one of the most powerful institutions on Earth. It wasn't about rebellion or crime or ego. It was about a human instinct as old as time itself. Curiosity. Curiosity is what drives us forward and what threatens the structures we build. It can topple walls, break codes, unravel secrets, and sometimes it takes the mind of a child to remind us just how fragile those walls are. Today, that teenager is grown. Where he is, what he does, whether he still whispers to machines in the quiet of night, no one truly knows. But the story of how he outsmarted the FBI has become a legend. Not because it was about power, not because it was about crime, but because it was about possibility. That somewhere in the hum of a suburban bedroom, a kid with nothing but curiosity changed the way a superpower saw itself. And maybe that's the haunting part, that no matter how many cameras we install, how many gates we lock, how many codes we write, the greatest force of disruption isn't always outside our walls. Sometimes it's already in the bedroom down the hall.